there members of the public here who wish to make a comment at this time to items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at this point and move on to commissioner comments. Commissioners, comments? George?
I'll start. After a long work session yesterday, I got home and cracked open a beer and turned on the radio, and just happenstance on KJAX, they were doing a live interview with Walter Isaacson about his biographical book on Steve Jobs. And I thought, well, this is wonderful. The programs that the Aspen Institute provides to the community is a great amenity for us to enjoy. And in fact, I was able to listen to a few of the conversations and presentations from the Aspen Ideas Festival as well. So, for people who don't have the time or the money, through the Aspen Institute and through their sponsors and through KJAX and Grassroots, we have access to such great programs. I just want to commend all those organizations and entities that are involved in providing access to all of us. Tonight, there's going to be a conversation with Justice Anthony Kennedy, and that won't be broadcast, but for a very nominal fee, one can sit in at that conversation, and again, open to the public. I think it's going to be space available only, but it's just a great amenity. I know a week ago, the Aspen Physics Institute celebrated their 50th anniversary. The Music Associates, I think this is their 64th anniversary, which makes the Aspen Institute their 65th year. These are just icons for our community, and they were all first established through the inspiration and vision of Walter Eska, and that has created where we are today. It's such a vibrant community, and there's an old saying that, we came for winter, but we stayed for summer. And certainly the summer cultural and arts and outdoors events make it all worthwhile. So take advantage of all these great amenities we have.
Thanks, George. Other commissioner comments? Rob?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, George. I was at the Walter Isaacson event last night. It was great. They had an overflow into Pepke Auditorium as well, where they broadcasted it on a big screen there. And they had a big tent, which probably had about 500 people in it. So it was a pretty spectacular event. And we've got so many amenities here in Aspen. We're really grateful. I just wanted to mention protecting those amenities. We still have a fire ban in this county, even though the governor has pulled back his executive order on his fire ban for the statewide. We still feel that in this county and our neighboring counties have fire bans regarding any open fire, any charcoal grills, smoking outside in public lands and public spaces. I missed the meeting, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, our last regular meeting. I had to be out of town for something, but the weekend before that, I was hiking in the southern part of Colorado State, and I was hiking out of the trails, and I picked up 3 cigarette butts on the way out of that trail, and it was dry as a bone. This was before we had the little bit of rain that we've had. But I also want to reflect to the public out there that the little bit of rain has a tremendous evaporation rate. It really does not replenish the ground's fuel for wildfires. We still have a very high danger of wildfires out there, and I still want everybody to be aware that we have a fire ban. The sheriff was in here yesterday. He does not see releasing that fire ban at any time soon, so I would anticipate that fire ban is going to be on into the fall. We don't want to take it on and off with one little rain, because as I just said, there's still a high fire danger even if we have a little rain. So please, if you see somebody out there with a cigarette, tell them we have a fire ban. All it takes is one cigarette butt or something into the woods, and we could have a disaster on our hands. So everybody be aware of that.
Thanks, Rob. Jack?
Yeah, thank you. Last weekend, I was asked to fill some space and time by reading a resolution that Michael had already read concerning honoring the Aspen Physics Center. So, another take on what you were talking about. It was a great time. Some of the founders, actually all three founders were there. Some funny jokes, etc. We were limited to 3 minutes, and I pretty much stuck to that. But it was a great time had by all, and I was really hoping that some of that intellect would be absorbed by me by osmosis. I mean, it would be really nice, But no, it was a fine time, and we actually had to go inside because of the continual drizzle, which, hey, no problem. Always have a backup plan. But it was a fine time, and it's just part of the Aspen idea when you combine arts, music, science all together. It's what this community is about, and we ought to be very appreciative of that and honored to have these institutions in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Rachel?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's already covered a lot of the highlights. I just am going to follow up on Rob's comment. Being a little bit of a gardener, I have found that if you dig a couple inches below the surface, the dirt is still bone dry. So the deficit that we have in moisture has not been made up, and it would take a month of rain straight, I think, to get us out of the drought conditions we're really in. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that if they have not already, they should sign up for the Pitkin emergency alerts. If your reverse 911 is not working for any number of reasons, like you only have a cell phone or you're hooked up to a fax machine or various things, you will not get a reverse 911. And so the best way to protect yourself is to sign up for the email alerts. And the two addresses, you can go to aspenpitkin.gov and then follow the links to the emergency alert system, or you can go directly to pitkinemergency.org, all one word.
And just one correction, Rachel, it's
Okay.
actually aspenpitkin.com.
aspenpitkin.com.
Yeah, that's
Sorry
my
about
poor
that.
rating, I think.
Okay, there we go. But so we're trying to get as many people as possible signed up for that system. It certainly is helpful in the winter about any avalanches alerts or road closures or things like that. So try to stay informed and keep yourself safe. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll go on now to consent actions. First item is minutes of work session June 12th, June 19th, and the regular meeting is June 27th. Is there a motion?
Michael, I was not here for June 27th.
Okay.
Nor was I. So I'll make a motion to pass the minutes of June 12th, work session of June 12th and June 19th.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll
I'd like to
make-
make a motion. I'd like to make a motion approving the regular meeting minutes of June 27th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. The next item is a resolution appointing independent referees, hearing officers, to hear taxpayers' appeals of the Pitkin County Assessor's valuation and developing a list of persons qualified to act as arbitrators of property valuation disputes. Jeanette Jones is here. Oh, she was here. Jeanette, do you want to just talk about this a little bit?
I have asked Larry Fight to join us today too.
And Larry Fight is with the...
Assessor's office. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
I'm Jeanette Jones with the Clerk and Recorder's office. It's a very quiet year this year with one exception, and that is agricultural properties. And that is probably going to be the most of our appeals this year. We'll probably get it in maybe 2 days. The deadline to apply appeal for personal real property, is July 15th, and that falls on a Sunday this year, so we've got till extending it to July 16th, and so that's just a couple of days left. So far, we have 9 agricultural properties that are appealing, 1 commercial, 1 residential. So what's before you today is the opportunity to appoint hearing officers to hear these appeals if you so choose to do that. And if you have questions about the ag properties, I've asked Larry to answer those questions.
Great. Larry, let me ask you, what is the change in agricultural properties?
This relates to a new law that was passed whereby we are charged with assigning a home site value under the homes of properties that are inhabited by people who are not integral to the ag operation on whatever the property may be. And we sent out, I want to say, in the neighborhood of 125 changes to that effect. We really didn't receive a huge number of appeals back from that, but the ones that we did receive are the ones that are likely to come back before the CBOE.
So what you're saying is that the property is not pertinent or to the operation of the agricultural piece of the property is going to be classified differently, not as an agricultural property?
Yes, up to 2 acres under the home site is now eligible for classification as residential and valued with a market value as opposed to the agricultural value that previously had been assigned for the land underlying the house. The house itself has always been valued at market value, but the land underlying the house in the past had always carried the same agricultural land value as the balance of the property. And so now we will be assigning a separate market value for the land under the house itself.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Jack.
Yeah, this is really quite a positive advance for counties, even though we face the challenge of, dealing with the assessments, property values. We find that it's so critical because there are a lot of quote-unquote gentleman ranches, as it were, and they were taking advantage of a tax loophole. I apologize here. Of a tax loophole that allowed them to value their property almost insignificantly, as it were. So this is a positive, even though it would be extra work for us. I also want to compliment Ken Call, Steve Hatch, Jack Musser, or Musser, whatever the proper pronunciation is, Dave Ritter and Kim Tarver for coming on board and hearing the appeals and arbitrations. This is another positive for us. My early days as a commissioner, we did these ourselves, and I think this is, I apologize again, a much better process because we have professionals, consistency, efficiency, etc., and it really works, and I'm certainly supportive of spending what amounts to a small amount of money, and we, at the end, it hope to accomplish a fair distribution of property values throughout the county instead of people kind of escape, on a little bit of their responsibility. So this is really positive that we continue to do this.
Yes, sir.
I'd make a motion if you're ready.
Let me just ask Larry one more question. Larry, could you outline what the process is? So evaluations go out in mid-January or something like that?
The valuations go out on May 1st
May 1st.
Of each year. The first round of appeals, people request a revision through the assessor's office.
So they come directly to the assessor's office and say, we think your valuation's off.
Yeah, either the classification or the valuation. We send out a notice of determination on June 1st. They have until July 15th, or in this case, July 16th, to file an appeal of our decision, which is where we're at now.
And then, so these people who are acting as adjusters or arbitrators, then that's the next step for the person who's appealing?
Correct. So, for example, for the people who have already filed their appeals with the CBOE, Jeanette will schedule a hearing.
And the CBOE is
The
what?
County Board of Equalization. We will schedule a hearing. The taxpayer has a chance to present their position. The assessor's office presents our position, and then the hearing officer will make a determination as to whether or not a change should be made, and if so, how much.
Right, and is there an appeals beyond that then?
Correct. If taxpayers are not satisfied with the outcome of the County Board of Equalization, they can appeal either to district court, binding arbitration, or to the State Board of Assessment Appeals.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Any further questions? I'll accept a motion at this time, John.
I'd like to make a motion to approve appointing the independent referees, the hearing officers, to hear taxpayers' appeals of the Pickens County Assessor's valuation and developing a list of persons qualified to act as arbitrators of property valuation disputes.
I'd like to second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Jeanette, be sure to thank the people who volunteered to do this.
And we're doing something a little different this year. Typically, past years, we've had a hearing officer who hears a case, one hearing officer. The hearing officers are going to sit as a panel this year, the three of them, because this is something new and it's significant. And so we organized it in that respect this year.
Great.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So they're not really true volunteers, but because they're getting paid.
They're getting
So does that, you've got to sort of adjust your budget for that?
There is budget.
17.
It's set every year through the manager's office.
Yeah, we have adequate budget. Obviously, having that extra oversight in this process will probably add to some of the costs of reviewing individual appeals, but we think that it's going to be a better process to ensure an accurate assessment, given that this is brand new to us and to the state.
Great, thank you very much, Larry and Jeanette. Jeanette, are you going to stick around?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The next item is consent public hearings. The first item under that heading is the special event liquor permit for Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter, and Jeanette Jones is here to answer any questions. Any questions for Jeanette? So, Jeanette, do you have are there representatives of...
Yeah, Seth Saxon and Ann Gerchik is here.
Would you come forward and just explain what this event is?
Okay. It's a fundraiser on Saturday.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Seth Saxon from the, today representing Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter, our nonprofit. And so we have a fundraiser on Saturday, July 28th, for our nonprofit to raise money. As you guys know, I have a contract with you guys for the animal shelter with the city and the county. So we have a self-sustaining facility, but our nonprofit is basically the icing on the cake. So the nonprofit generates revenue to neuter animals all over the country. We neuter about 1,000 animals a year free of charge. We never turn anyone away in our valley and beyond. We do Grand Junction all the way to Texas. And when we've taken care of Pickens County and the city of Aspen, any kennel space that we have open, we take in animals under the Goodwill category, and we take them from death row and other areas, including like Cortez. We take some dogs from. We help out neighboring shelters that are full all the time, including CARE, Colorado Animal Rescue. And so the nonprofit steps up for that as well and pays all of the medical bills, the vet bills. So we're sort of, for our rescue program as well as our neuter program, we're having a fundraiser. We have a fundraiser every summer, and that generates the bulk of our revenue for the year.
Great, thank you. Questions, Rachel?
How do people get tickets to the event, and what date is it again?
Saturday, July 28th, they can call our nonprofit line 927-1771, or they can call the shelter at 544-0206.
Thank you.
And should I plug it? Do you want to know more about the party?
Sure.
We have a lot. It's a 70s disco theme. I'll do it quickly. But 70s disco theme. It's a live disco band called Boogie Machine, who was at our original Bow Wow Meow Ball fundraiser at the Wiley's Ranch before we built the facility. We're going to have dinner, dancing, live auction, silent auction. I'm going to it's at my house actually in Old Snowmass, and I'm going to bring all my animals to the shelter, and we're going to have adoptable pets there on display for people to play with and get to know, and it's going to be a really fun time for a good cause.
Thank you.
That sounds terrific. Any further questions? Is there a motion? Jack?
I'll make that motion. I'd like to move to approve special event liquor license application for the Friends of the Animal Shelter.
Second.
Any further?
This is a public hearing.
Oh, it is? Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this particular liquor license application? Seeing none, we will close.
Can I make one comment that might be of importance? On the permit that I have hanging in my yard, and when you just said it's actually Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter, because the permit says Friends of the Animal Shelter. I don't know if that matters for legal.
We'll straighten it out.
Okay.
So it's a public hearing. I opened it up and closing it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Oh,
Seth.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The next item is another liquor license for the Wilderness Workshop. Are there representatives of the Wilderness Workshop here? Would you come forward, please?
Sorry, Dave Reed. I'm sorry, I apologize. Maybe you were Stephen in former life.
Jeanette, could you just explain, is this similar to the last one?
This, is it okay if I went?
Okay. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Dave Reed with the Wilderness Workshop. We've done picnics, kind of low-key picnics up at East Marin Creek for the last several years. This is different. This is on private property, the Flying Dog mentioned the creek, and it's going to be bigger. We'll have 3 bands and amplified music, stage, and selling alcohol, selling beer and wine. And it should be pretty good. It's called Wild Fest.
And when is it?
This Saturday.
This coming Saturday?
Yeah.
And it's located where?
At Flying Dog Ranch, which is 3069 Lanedo Road.
Woody Creek Road.
Woody Creek.
Yeah.
You know, people in Woody Creek say, no, it's not Woody Creek Road, it's
No.
Lanedo.
Yeah.
Because there's a-
It goes to Lanedo, and it used to be Lanedo Road, but the county in all its wisdom changed it to Woody Creek Road. Are there any questions for Jeanette or Dave? Is there a motion? Oh, let me say this. This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion of this event and go on to a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the special event liquor license application for the Wilderness Workshop.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Yes?
Well, I would make a brief comment. Both the animal shelter and yours are going to be great events, and I wish I could attend, but I'm going to be in Pittsburgh with the National Association of Counties. So you keep fighting for wilderness here, I'll keep fighting for it over there. Thank you.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Jeanette and Dave.
Thank you very much.
The next item is a consent action, first reading, set for public hearing on July 25th. This is a resolution authorizing a memo of understanding with the Bureau of Land Management for the administration of certain commercial raptors taking out at Wingo Junction. And it says here Gary Tenenbaum, but I see Dale Will in front of us. Dale?
Thank you, Michael. I'm Dale Will, Director of Pickton County Open Space. Gary Tenenbaum is on vacation this week. And this is really a continuation of a relationship that's been working very smoothly for the last 5 years. The boat ramp down at Wingo was one of those things that our friends at CDOT were able to construct as they were four-laning the Highway 82. It wasn't built by the BLM, and consequently the BLM has been looking for ways to avoid getting drawn deeper into managing that. We have been happy to fill that role because we're managing most of the put-ins that use Wingo as a takeout. Our launch site at Jaffe Park is the source of at least most of the commercial outfitters that are using the boat ramp down at Wingo, so there's an obvious synergy to having a single agency track the permits and the insurance and all that kind of thing. So we're happy to do this. It doesn't add any significant cost to what we're otherwise needing to do to manage Jaffe Park. And we're also happy to help out a sister agency in a location where we're really close or at hand.
Any questions for Dale? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to approve The authorization of a memorandum of understanding with the Bureau of Land Management for the administration of certain commercial rafters taken out at Windmill Junction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dale, and we'll see you again on the 25th. Now, this agreement expires on the 17th, so there's a...
Well, hence the reason that we are saying that we want the ordinance to take immediate effect on adoption. So, yes, we may have a short period in which we are transitioning from one MOU to the next.
Okay.
And,
But you've got it covered.
got it covered.
Okay,
Things are working smoothly down there.
thank you. The next items are consent public hearing, second readings. We have an ordinance vacating a trail easement on the Sparrow Lot 1A and accepting a new trail easement and river access easement from River Sanctuary. And Dale's here for that also.
Right. I have a map, the same one that we looked at first reading. I'm happy to project that if you want.
Could you do that? That'd be great.
Okay. That was turned on, but it sounds like it might be off now, Dale.
Yeah, the red button. I'm a druid as far as operator things like this.
Why don't I get the map up? Well, maybe you talk through it.
Okay. Once you get to the menu on the flash drive there, I'll find it. As we discussed at first reading, this item has to do with really a housekeeping matter that dates way back to the 1980s when a trail easement was dedicated as a part of the land use approval. And we're always happy when we inherit these easements that come about through the workings of Cindy and her shop. The East of Aspen Trail is, of course, a very important piece of our system. It gets people from Aspen up to Wildwood at the moment, and by the end of the summer we will have completed our final connection to difficult campgrounds. This piece of the trail is open and has been used by the public for years, and on a recent review of the easement location versus the location of the trail, we discovered that when that trail was built back in the 1990s, they didn't follow the exact alignment of the easement. I'm guessing that they did not want to put that trail right on the stream bank as the easement had anticipated. So essentially what we're doing here is we worked out an agreement with the landowner to vacate the stream bank easement in return for an easement that conforms to the existing location of the trail, and given that part of the original easement included river access, we are creating a connector between that river access point and what will now become the permanent location of the trail, so that there will be no interruption in the public's ability to get in and out of the river. Perfect. This is all illustrated now on the map we have up here. This is the reach of the East of Aspen Trail that's between the Stillwater Bridge and North Star. Very beautiful part of our town. And the yellow line shows you where the trail actually is. The orange line shows you where the easement was originally dedicated, and that it is the orange line that you would be agreeing to vacate with the caveat that there's a connector maintained inside the red box so that the river access off of the actual trail will be continued, and of course we will have a permanent trail easement then along the route that the trail is on.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Dale? This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Michael, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance vacating a trail easement on the Sparovic Lot 1A and accepting a new trail easement and river access easement from the River Sanctuary LLC.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, Dale. Thank you for the map, too.
Sure. We'll just leave the computer on.
The next item is item number 7, an ordinance accepting temporary construction easements and a permanent construction easement from property owners along Coal Creek Road for the Coal Creek Culvert Replacement Project. And G.R. Fielding is here to explain this. Do we have maps on this issue?
I didn't prepare any for today,
Oh, my goodness.
My apologies.
Oh, you know how much I like the maps, and what it does is it helps people who are watching the show orient themselves to exactly what we're talking about. So,
Michael, we can put this up.
Yes.
We can put something up, but...
Do you have the hard copy?
All right, so we have our exhibit for the temporary easements. Sorry, thank you, Michael. I'm G.R. Fielding. I'm the county engineer. We are receiving 3 separate easements from 2 property owners up Coal Basin. Coal Basin, the project site is approximately 1.3 miles up Coal Creek Road from State Highway 133 above Redstone. And this project is very close to where it goes from private land ownership up into the Forest Service. It's a popular access point for people accessing the forest. The reason that we're doing the project is we've got several walls and a culvert that are in various states of failure, and we need these easements in order to ease the construction process. As I said, we have 3 easements that we're receiving. One is a permanent easement. You can see that on the south side of the drawing. It allows us to construct some of the head wall here, and that head wall protects an embankment and part of one of the adjacent landowners' properties. In order to get down there, we do need this temporary construction easement, and that allows us to get down and work adjacent to those walls without trying to build from the top down. And the same is true on the north side of this drawing, and this is a construction easement from another landowner in Coal Basin, and that allows us to use their property to access areas where we're going to need to construct walls, and also to aid in how we're going to drop the actual structure into the ground.
when you say actual structure, do you mean the culvert itself?
Yes, the culvert.
Any questions for GR? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this particular item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, accepting temporary construction easements and a permanent easement from the property owners along Coal Creek Road for the Coal Creek Culvert Replacement Project.
Second it.
Any further discussion?
Michael?
Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I would again, as we did at first reading, like to thank the Rubiano and the Simpson property owners for working very well with us and actually helping facilitate this construction project.
Yeah, it's been absolutely great to work with.
Great, thank you, Jack. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, GR. The next item is on item number 8. It's a resolution authorizing Pickens County to perform consumer protection services on behalf of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Cindy Coogan is here representing the matter.
Hi, I'm Cindy Hooven, Director of Community Development for Pickens County. And first of all, I'd like to introduce you to your new Environmental Health Manager, Kurt Dahl, who has just started. And
When did Kurt start?
actually the 27th of June.
27th of June, and then I was gone to a national conference. So this week really has been my first week.
How's it been so far?
It's been great. It's been fun. A little overwhelming as one would expect, but I've enjoyed it a lot.
Great. Great. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Kurt comes with a lot of experience. He's our president-elect for the Colorado chapter of the Environmental Health Association, and has a lot of experience in both the on-site wastewater system, treatment systems, and consumer protection. And we're actually here today, and Kurt does have experience with the intergovernmental contracts that we have with the state. So we're here today for the second reading of our intergovernmental contract through the Pickens County Master Contract with the state of Colorado to do our consumer protection program. The state forwards approximately $12,000 to us in order for us to do those inspections of the restaurants throughout the county. So if you have any other detailed technical questions, Kurt would be able to answer those.
So, well, let me ask, I mean, when you say consumer protection, that seems like a very broad subject. But really what we're talking about is food, service, inspections.
Food service and schools and child care facilities.
So, and do the schools, are they required to have inspections?
Yes. Yes, and depending on the type of school, if they have a lab, the inspection is once a year. Like a high school that would have a lab. If it's like an elementary school that does not, it's once every 3 years.
Interesting. And we supervise that inspection?
Yes, we do. We actually perform the inspections themselves.
Okay. Any questions, other questions for Kurt or Cindy? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this Consumer Protection Services item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion approving a resolution authorizing Pickens County to perform consumer protection services on behalf of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Kurt, thank you. Cindy?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the land use public hearing on the Anthony's Brown constrained site TDR. But I don't see the applicants in
No,
the
you do not. The applicant and staff have agreed to request a continuance on this item. As you'll recall, when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, there was a continuing dilemma as to how to deal with this property, how to do what is best to try to preserve and enhance the archaeological resource that we all agree is on the property. And we had no solution and felt it premature to make a decision. And if you'll remember, you asked if Dale Will, the Open Space Director, could look in some directions that Open Space might be able to help. And Dale has done some very good work, and interestingly, there are archaeological conservation easements. He has been in touch with the group that does that, and they even go so far as to prepare management plans for archaeological sites, and they even perform some services for free. So Dale is trying to continue and enhance that discussion, and we talked with the applicant about that, and the applicant agreed that given that this good work is going on, that there should be a continuance to see if we can find a better solution for that property. So the applicant would like to be continued 2 weeks just to keep things moving, with the understanding that it might take a month for Dale and this archaeological group to get their feet on the ground about this, and therefore maybe it would be continued again, but they would ask if you could continue it to July 25th.
Great.
So moved.
Second. This is a public hearing, and so are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this particular item, the Anthony's Brown constrained site TDR? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this portion, and we'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So this item is continued till, what was the date again?
July 25th.
July,
Your next regular meeting.
July 25th. Thank you, Lance, we appreciate it. The next item is under land use actions, Elam minor amendment to development permit for night operations, and Michael Kramer is and so is Michael not going to be here?
Michael Kramer and Suzanne Wolf are not available today, so you have me as the lone presenter. So I will be presenting this item. And the two gentlemen from Elam, if you would come forward. What we have before you is a minor amendment to the Elam Sand and Gravel Pit approval, the omnibus approval, the 20-year approval that was granted a few years ago. And in that approval, there's a specific provision that allows night use of the pit and of the asphalt machine for 10 nights a year for public projects. What we discovered early on in working with Elam is that a lot of the airport work, a lot of the highway work can only be done at night, and that therefore there are times when the asphalt hot mix plant and the trucks have to run at night. And we wanted to be able to facilitate that for public projects, not for private projects. So we have in that approval 10 nights a year for county, state, city, airport type projects where they can work past the deadline of 7 p.m. They can work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. They can drive trucks, they can run the hot mix plant. And that provision is that in order to do that, they have to notify the WJ homeowners and the Woody Creek Caucus, I believe 72 hours ahead of time, that they're going to do it, so everybody is aware. But what is being requested is a minor amendment just for this year for the airport project. As you know, the airport project, which involves expanding tremendously the de-icing pad, building a taxiway connector between the two runways, building a new roadway on the west side of the runway.
It's, just let me clarify that, it's a taxiway and a runway, we only have one.
The two parallel main arteries will be connected. And there's work, service road improvements and drainage improvements happening on the west side of the airport. And Elam did secure the contract for all this work, and it will require night operations, but it will require more than 10 nights, and they've requested that they be allowed to have 20 nights this year. It was referred to the Woody Creek Caucus and to the WJ Homeowners Association and to the adjoining neighbor, Gail Braun. And you have recommendations of approval from the WJ homeowners and from the Woody Creek Caucus. And staff is recommending this one-time 2012 amendment, which would allow 20 nights instead of 10 nights for the airport project. We're also up to 60 trucks instead of the limitation of 40 trucks a night. Two things. That 10-night limitation included a 40-truck limitation. They're asking for 20 nights and 60 trucks a night. And they would be operating the asphalt hot mix plant and the concrete batch plant. That is the request. Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Lance. Any questions for Lance? Gentlemen, would you introduce yourselves and just explain your situation?
Okay. Gail Lyman, I'm the environmental property manager for Elam Construction.
Todd Bauer, president of Elam Construction.
And Lance hit pretty much all of it as far as why we're here asking for this amendment, as far as securing the successful low bid for the improvements at the airport. As Lance mentioned, we're seeking an increase for nighttime operations going from 10 to 20, and this is all dependent on, or because of the scope and magnitude of the work being done at the airport. We're also asking for an increase in truckloads per each one of those nighttime operations, going from 40 to 60. And then the third one, because it doesn't specifically identify it within Condition 16 of the resolution that was passed in 2009, is the operation of the concrete plant that is currently within our gravel pit. Those three items we're asking to be allowed for this year, this construction season, and for just this project going forward. One thing that I want to, I guess, emphasize in front of the commissioners is that, no mining, no crushing, no other, what would be considered normal daytime activities will be taking place at nighttime. What we're doing is bashing the asphalt plant, or bashing the asphalt at the asphalt plant, loading it into the trucks, and then hauling it off-site to the airport. And then the same would occur, whenever they would need concrete at night, is to be able to bash that concrete, load it into those trucks, and haul that off-site during the night. So that's the operations that are specifically requested. All the other conditions within that use permit, and especially the nighttime operations, will remain as they're specified in the current special use permit.
Thank you, Gail. Any questions? Rob? George?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. First of all, I'll just say that, being able to do these things at night, specifically with the airport during our summer months, allows us to maintain a service level for our heavy traffic during the summer months. The one question that I do have, and I don't know if it's for the applicant or for Lance, or maybe a combination of both, is what sort of protocol for complaints, or if there is someone hears noise at 3 in the morning and they want to call somewhere, they get an answering machine. Obviously, nobody's around in the county offices. Is there a way that we can set up, as part of this application, a better, more elaborate, or more fail-safe protocol for someone to be able to rectify a situation of noise that may be beyond what we want?
Well, they will be under the same noise restrictions as the daytime operation, which is 55 decibels at the property line. That won't change. But there's not going to be a Pitkin County employee available at 3 a.m. I would recommend that if there were a specific issue that someone felt was over and above running the 2 batch plants and running the 60 trucks, that they call the pit directly. You could give them the number. There'll be somebody there for sure in the office while they're there, and then they leave a message with Pitkin County Community Development, just like they do for any other complaint, at 920-5529.
So they'd be leaving a message on somebody's machine, and
that's correct.
I guess maybe just making sure that everything's happening properly to address those complaints as quickly as possible, because when the 10 days over, it's the extra 10 days, because it's 20 days for the year, so an additional 10 days.
Just a little background. They have, since I've been here, night operations for public projects have happened 3 or 4 other times. There haven't been, that I'm aware of, specific comments. Doesn't mean there won't be this time, but.
Thank you.
John, I'm sorry, George. Let me ask you, so Elam's come in front of us, and they're going to be the contractor for a project that we're initiating at the airport. And here we are approving that exception. So what I'm suggesting is that it has the appearance of, how would we possibly turn this down? Because we want to have a successful project. We want Elam to be able to perform that project. So it looks to me like a conflict.
I just didn't pick up on that.
I was thinking that the board was judging this on its merits to determine whether or not the operation at night and the increased traffic was acceptable, given the parameters of what the proposed work order was. And if it were not, then the board would not grant this modification to the special use permit. And we might entertain discussions with another contractor. But given the way the situation has presented itself, I think that's what the board is about.
Okay, well, that clarifies it at least from your point of view. I'm glad you have such a clear-eyed view of county business. I just wanted to ask that question. I wanted to get it out there because I think people would ponder that situation also.
Perhaps, but I guess with tongue out of cheek, the county has other options than this, and so we're not in a position of having to do anything.
Okay. Okay. So, George?
I had a similar question concern, but I really view this as a public benefit. And the airport has received a grant, an FAA grant of $1.4 million or $1.9 million to get this project done. And in fact, we recently approved an extension of hours being allowed for the work at the airport to tie in with that grant, which were under some guidelines, and also because of the weather issue as well. So I'm comfortable with all that. I guess my question is, if we have an alternative, I'm assuming this went out as an RFP, and do we have any other applicants who anyone else have bidded on it, and where would they have come from?
We have other bidders. I do not have that information at my fingertips right now, George. I do think there was obviously some advantage to being able to more locally source some of the items for the project that made Elam's bid more competitive than the other bids. I can try and get hold of those. I just don't have that information who the second bidder was and where they were coming from.
Yeah, I guess I'm assuming that not only are we keeping our local workforce employed and our local businesses, but we're also probably, because of the shorter distance, we're not going to be impacting Highway 82, because I'm assuming that any other concrete plant would be down valley, and that would have especially at this time where we're doing, CDOT's doing, along with Elam, is doing a lot of work along Highway 82. So I think it's a benefit for the local economy, it's a benefit for the airport, it's certainly a public benefit to utilize a local company, especially with a competitive bid.
Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I fully support this, given that we follow our procurement, process, et cetera, and I have no doubts that we did that. And an important factor is about the neighborhood. And the neighbors, there's been quite a considerable evolution from the 90s to now, as far as the relationship with the Woody Creek Caucus and the neighbors in particular. And this is very positive, and I'll quote Janet Schoberlin from her note from the Woody Creek Caucus. As in the past, we note that Elam has worked hard to be a good neighbor in the Woody Creek community, and I would anticipate that would continue. Rob, of course, brought up a good point. Always got to cover every base, but I'm not into making roadblocks per se, or I think it's a very fair process, and this will be a very positive public benefit when we're done.
Thank you. Any other? Rachel?
Michael, I would just add that I'm in agreement with the comments that have been made. I appreciate Rob asking about protocol and trying to make sure that we would have a rapid response when someone answers the phone in the morning after any sort of night calls. But just to note that, when you talk about asphalt hot mix, it's a lot easier to work with when it's hot. And the longer it's hauled in a truck on the way up, the more difficult it can be to get the type of quality product you particularly need on something like a runway, or a taxiway, excuse me, but for those sort of aircraft. And so I've had experience with that in the past where, half of the load couldn't be used, certainly more in the fall and cooler time periods, but we're starting to see some cool nights already. We've passed the solstice, and so I think that for quality of product as well, the closer to the airport, the better for the hot mix.
Let me ask you, Gail, these trucks will be pulling out at night, all night long?
Probably starting around 11 or 11:30 at night. We can't get onto the airport until after the airport shuts down, which the airport runs, I think, from 7 to 11. So, we have to set up our safety control, traffic control, everything at the airport. I'm guessing we'll probably start 11 or 11:30.
Probably start to produce about 11:30 and trucks moving around midnight by the time we get started. And
So
we have to be everything off and access back to the flights by 6:30 in the morning. So if that puts us done 5:30 by the time we finish up.
So my concern would be that since this is a change in sort of the habits and patterns of traffic in Woody Creek, that somehow people will be notified that there's trucks pulling out of the Elam driveway onto W/J Hill, and whether it's a flashing light or notice ahead of time or something, because people aren't going to be expecting, unless they're watching this particular show, there's going to be traffic on the road. So I would like you to consider some sort of warning system that says, number one, during the day, expect trucks to be coming out at night, and some sort of notification at night. I don't know what that is.
Signs?
Can I jump in here real quick? In the resolution passed in 2009 underneath condition 16 for nighttime operations, item C says that we must submit a traffic control plan to the county engineer, which includes suitable methods of providing warnings. Same thing you're talking about. Information and signage to persons using the county roads and bike trails. Okay. Second one, we have to send out notifications to the, I lost it here.
The caucus in WJ.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I'll get 2 hours before we start truck traffic. So there's 2 different levels of notification and warning that we're obligated to do per the resolution. So.
Right. So I think it would be good if you pursued that, and because driving back home at night and meeting 60 trucks, they're not going to meet them all at once, but heavy truck traffic is possible. It's good to have that kind of.
No, I agree. We're very much on public safety as well as our own employee safety.
Right. Any other questions? Yes, Rachel?
Yeah, and Gail, it's my understanding that you've devised more of a queuing system for loading those trucks so they're not in a backup mode and they don't have to activate the backup beepers.
Right. The traffic route with an asphalt plant is, if it's a circular motion, they're always driving forward.
Okay.
And with the loader, the same requirements that we've got the scrambled noise backup alarm with the loaders, because that's still an MSHA requirement that we have some kind of a backup alarm, but we have the white noise backup alarms, which will be on the loaders as well.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Jack.
Yeah, and obviously all this is about health, safety, and welfare, community. And we did, when we had representatives of the airport in here, just express some sensitivity about nighttime work as well as weekends, and it's totally left up to the airport to manage that according to weather and all that. But, right along from the beginning, we've expressed a concern that we make sure we do the best job mitigating whatever impacts there are.
So this isn't a public hearing. We've had lots of that up until now. But I do see Gail Braun in the audience who's attending, and I'll give her the opportunity to make any comments at this point.
Thank you. I think I'll let Jody speak for a minute.
Okay, and Jody, Jody Edwards,
Yes,
and you represent the Bronze?
yes.
Okay, Jody.
With Gail Lyman's, not Gail Braun's, assurance that there will be no mining and no crushing and other similar loud daytime activities, we don't have any opposition to the proposed amendments. We would like to, in one or two sentences, point out that about 3 months ago, we were in here for approval of a modification of the whole mining plan, and we want to let you know it's not working very well. The dust has been pretty extreme this year, the noise and the visual. Those things were supposed to be invisible. We weren't supposed to be able to see them at all. We see them all the time. And we have been keeping a log and a record of that, and we've been emailing Lance and Mike Kramer, so they are aware of that. We're not going to drag you through all those instances today, but we just wanted you to be aware that it's not working very well, and we expect to be discussing it next year at the usual special review hearing.
Jody, you mentioned that you can see things. Could you be more specific?
Of the loaders as they're pulling the rock down.
The track hoe?
Yeah, the track hoe.
It's also been, the berm that they created a year or so ago was to have been seeded last year. And
revegetation hasn't taken.
The revegetation hasn't really happened. Consequently, there's been an awful lot of dust off that, as well as the new mining based on all those high winds that we've had.
They're supposed to be watering 4 times a day. We have no way to verify that, but the dust has been unusually high.
Okay, so I was kind of hoping that we'd comment on this particular application. And
no objection to this particular application.
So what I suggest is that yourselves, representative of Elam and Community Development, get together and have a conference, a face-to-face conference about the issues that you're talking about, which are different from the issues we're addressing here right now.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Gail.
Gail.
Any further comments?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minor amendment to the development permit for night operations at the Elam.
Second. And Lance, let me just make clear, this is a minor amendment that's just for this particular year.
It's correct, 2012 only.
Only.
But the 10 nights goes on every year.
Right.
But it's the fact that they're asking for more than that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you for your time.
The next item is the Deadwood Ranch LLC amendments to the BOCC resolution.
Good riddance.
And I don't see Mitch.
Mitch, you out there? Come on down.
That's pretty quick. I think Mitch.
Yeah, don't say it.
Don't say it.
Well, let's take a 5-minute break because nobody's interested in this meeting. Everybody's right. So 5 minutes and we'll come back. Somebody will contact Mitch. The applicant.
Yeah, we can try and
Give it. We're at 1:10, and I think we're almost at the end of our agenda today. And the next item is the Deadwood LLC, Ranch LLC application, and Mitch Hawes is here to represent the Deadwood Ranch.
And
Lance
Clark is here to represent Community Development. Suzanne Wolf, whom you've seen a couple times on this item. This item was continued from a previous meeting. I believe that George and Mike and Rob were here, and Jack and Rachel were not. And one of the reasons it got continued was the fact that they wanted more voices. The board felt that we needed a full board, and Mitch preferred a full board, so we continued rather than trying to make a decision. But the property is now known as Deadwood Ranch LLC. It was formerly known as the Fender Middle Ranch property. And just to set everybody, put it in perspective, this is West Silpers Creek Road. coming up, this is the road where you turn off to go into Cypress Mountain Ranch. All of this is Cypress Mountain Ranch. So this is a freestanding 350-acre parcel joined by BLM property and by Cypress Mountain Ranch. And we did a site visit, and I'm not sure if everyone was on that site visit, but before approving their conservation development PUD, there was a site visit. And if you'll recall, this is the little old driveway to get up there, and it parallels this drainage, this little creek that runs through the middle of the property. And if you'll remember, on either side of the creek were two little ramshackle historical buildings, one more ramshackle than the other. But part of the approval was that those two buildings would go in the historic register and they would be restored. And at the time of the approval, there was no specific use given to them. It just said they would be accessory structures. There was no specific use, and there was no specific discussion about how the floor area fit into the approved floor area for the parcel. So the applicant, utilizing Mitch's services, came in with an application to clarify and make clear what the allowed use of those two historic cabins could be. They requested to exempt the floor area of those two small buildings from the overall floor area that's approved on the property. And then the other issue was, if you remember, that driveway up there was substandard, and the ultimate plan calls for a new driveway to be built. And the way the original conditions read was that the new driveway would have to be in place before any of this kind of work could happen. And so the applicant asked that they be allowed to do the restoration work on these two cabins without being required to construct a new driveway. Those were the requests. And on May 23rd, there was quite a bit of discussion about how to deal primarily with the floor area. The property, as it's part of a CD PUD, is fairly limited in its development. What it's allowed to have is two single-family homes with a total floor area of 8,250 square feet. Two caretaker dwelling units, each containing 1,000 square feet. 19,960 square feet of barn floor area. That's the allowed floor area on the property. So the primary thing that the board was discussing at its last meeting was, so how do we treat the floor area of these two historic cabins? And at that time, the applicant was requesting that they be exempted entirely and they not be deducted from the remaining allowed floor area. And most of the discussion was, well, how should we deal with that? Should the floor area of these be exempted, or should it come out of the 8,250 from the two free market single-family homes, or should it come out of one of the two caretaker dwelling units, and this perhaps be one of the caretaker dwelling units? And then I believe it was George that suggested there's also a 3,000 square foot availability on this property for other special review uses, such as a ranch manager's unit. They have not asked for that yet, but the zoning and the approval allows them to ask for that. And if I'm correct from looking at the minutes and recalling, I think that George had thought that the larger of the two cabins, which is being proposed to be about 850 feet, and which would be potentially used for a guest cabin with some restrictions on it, that 850 feet would be deducted from the 3,000 square feet that's available for other special review uses. So if there were to be built at some point a ranch manager's unit, it would only be 2,150 feet. And I think, if I recall, Michael was potentially talking about removing the 850 from the 8,250 of the free market units. But we never came to a conclusion and continued it and gave the applicant time to talk with the client, with the owner, and they have agreed that they would be acceptable to having the larger of the two historic cabins, which would be approximately 850 square feet, to have that be deducted from the 3,000 square feet that is available in the future for accessory structures such as a ranch manager's unit. And staff is also feels that that is a reasonable outcome of this. The smaller unit, which would not be a habitable dwelling, but just a picnic hunting structure, the recommendation is that that not be deducted from floor area at all, and it's quite small. Secondarily, we worked some more with the Salt Fire District to talk about what they would be willing to accept with regard to the construction of the new driveway. And they were amenable to a condition that would allow the restoration of these two buildings to happen without constructing a new driveway, but that Pitkin County would not issue certificates of occupancy or certificates of completion until the adequate access is in place. And that is the position of the applicant at this point, and staff finds that acceptable and now is putting it in front of the board.
Do you have questions for Lance, George?
Yeah, just for the other board members that were not here, although that discussion started with the idea of reducing potential future ranch managers' home by 850 square feet, Michael had suggested that we take that 850 square feet off of the permitted 8250 total, since the ranch manager house may or may not actually happen. And if it does, it'd be under special review anyway. And then also, the other option that was on the table that Suzanne Lopez suggested was that the larger cabin then replaces one of the CDUs. They're allowed 2 CDUs of up to 1,000 square feet each. And so the option would be to take this larger cabin of 850 square feet and use that in lieu of one of the CDUs. And so that's how we really left that discussion for Mitch to talk to his client, that these are the two options that we came up with, and we did not, I believe, have an agreement of the 850 off of a potential future ranch manager's house.
That's right. That's one of the reasons it did not get resolved, plus there were only 3 members.
Any other questions for Lance at this time?
I guess let me go ahead and ask and kind of recap for Lance. So you're saying that there seemed to be 3 options that the board was kicking around.
Correct.
One was 850 square feet out, future uses. The second is out of the 5750 of the primary residence.
The 8250
Out
of
of
the
the
two primary residences.
Okay. And then the third option would be one of the 2 CDUs that are allowed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Lance? Mitch, do you want to make your presentation?
Sure, I'm going to be real brief. I think Lance and
Could you just
George-
introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, sorry. Mitch Haas, Haas Land Planning, representing Gateway Branch 1 LLC, owner of which is a gentleman named Jerry Parker. Lance and George covered it quite well. I don't think I need to rehash all of that. When we left last time, I really had not been authorized by my client to accept really any of the discussions that were on the table, and certainly not the new idea that George had put out there for consideration. I've since spoken with him. Obviously, I submitted another letter following up, and he's agreed that there is definite plans, and I'm willing to say that on the record, definite plans to come back eventually before all that long with a ranch manager's residence proposal for special review. After kicking it around some, I was able to convince him that, like everybody pretty much in America up until 1990, someone can live in 2,000, 2,100 square feet even if they have a family. So With that, he's agreed to accept that proposal, assuming the commissioners are still willing to accept that, and basically take whatever the final built cabin size is. We would do an FAR calculation once it's built, and have it confirmed by Joanna Schaffner, the county zoning officer, and have that amount deducted from the 3,000 square feet potentially available for any special review uses. The plan is to use it for a ranch manager's residence. And of course, that would be confirmed and put in writing before we would ever be allowed. My suggestion when I get to the condition here is that that would be confirmed and put in writing before we're allowed to apply for any special review square footage. Jerry does not want to eliminate the caretaker unit. He feels it's important for him to have a caretaker unit up where the homes will be and not down at the bottom of the property. He's suggested, it was his idea to suggest the limitation on use of this guest house, that it's no more than 2 weeks at a time, no more than, I think it was 26 total weeks in any calendar year, limited only to his family and friends, no public use, it wouldn't be rented out. And we suggested that no CO be issued until the access to the property satisfies the Basalt Rural Fire Marshal. He's already begun working with Sopris engineers on the construction design drawings for the approved driveway, but doesn't want to build that right away. There's a ticking clock on when these restoration efforts would have to be completed. So he wants to undertake that effort first. And there would be no CO, no use or occupancy of the structures until the other driveway is built. So he wants to come back with the other driveway when he's ready to build primary residences, just to sort of spread out the expense. What else was there? So the other suggestion about taking the square footage out of the house is allowed. He just doesn't want to go there yet. He hasn't fully designed the houses. He doesn't know what it's going to be, but he knows he can live with taking it out of the 3,000 available for special review uses, and doesn't want to have to come back later and say, wait, I messed up by taking it out of the main residences or residence. He doesn't even know for sure if he's going to develop both of them yet. He bought the property, I'd say less than a year ago, maybe right around a year ago, so it's still working through. He plans to move to this property and retire eventually, but he's still working, so he's not in a big rush to get everything built. But knows that he'd have to finish these cabins by, what was the date in here? December of next year.
2013.
So if we can move forward on this, the work would likely begin this year and be finished next spring, next building season. So the only suggestion I had, all of the conditions as written are perfectly acceptable for my client. The only suggestion I had was adding language to the end of condition number 3, because the way it reads, the square footages of the cabins right now, we just have approximate numbers. We don't know what the little addition at the back of the cabin would be for a bathroom, so my suggestion for adding a sentence would be that final floor area of the restored larger cabin shall be confirmed with the Pickens County zoning officer prior to application for any special review uses, and remaining available floor area for such uses shall be determined accordingly, rather than assume it's going to be 850 square feet and just say a number now. It may be more, maybe a little less. I think we said no more than, but so with that, I think that covers it. Hopefully that's still all acceptable. It was a very good suggestion. I wish I had the authority when we were here last time to just say, okay, that's great, we'll go with it, but I didn't. So ask to continue to have everybody consider it and have the time to consult with my client to make sure what I could and couldn't say yes to.
Good. Thank you, Mitch. Any questions from Mitch? Yes, Jack.
I have no problem with not deducting it from the primary residence. I understand there's a lot of acres here, and there's a give and take for larger homes for a large acreage. And then, so we have a choice between deducting from the branch managers or eliminating the CDU. Mitch, could you explain to us the difference of use between what will be a potential CDU versus the larger cabin down the road?
Yeah, it starts with the approvals as they are. You can build either one or two primary residences, neither of which can exceed, well, the larger of which cannot exceed 5,750. The combined square footage can't exceed 8,250. If you do one residence, then you're only entitled to one caretaker unit. If you do two, then you can do a second caretaker unit. The client's feeling is that he wants the caretaker units to be taking care of the homes, or home, either one, and the surrounding property of the home, the landscaped area, not the ranch, per se. Whereas the ranch, being a 350-acre or so property with several fields that are irrigated, hayed, grazed, etc., there's particular expertise that's needed for that. So there's already been someone working up there for the last, I don't know what it's, a year, 2 years now, that's been doing sort of ranch management jobs, but comes and goes. The idea is to have either that person or someone of the same expertise live on the property and just oversee all the agricultural operations and not have to worry about the homes, the landscaping around the homes, that sort of thing, upkeep and maintenance, any of that. So for that purpose, and he seems certain, Jerry, that he's going to hire somebody who has a family. He wants to have an adequate sized house for a family to run the agricultural operation, and doesn't know what will be with the caretaker units, but wants those anyway to be near the home, in the primary building envelope, down where the historic buildings are, and which is really in all the agricultural area.
Okay, well, I appreciate that explanation. I'm not a fan of CDUs, but I can understand how it might work because no decision's made on one or two primaries, etc. So.
And he's not going to move here immediately either, so he wants someone to look after the house until he does make it a permanent property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mitch? Yes, Rachel?
Yeah, just being that I was absent at the last hearing, I wanted to kind of check in between you and George. Is this the solution, George, that you had thought was the better solution, was to take it out of future uses? I mean, I'm not sure how the three options evolved, other than, some came from the table, and so.
That was my original thought, but I thought Michael had thrown in a better idea, because this is we're sort of guessing if a ranch manager's house would actually be built or not. If it would never be built, then we're basically granting an additional 800 or so square feet. Well, I guess what I would suggest is sort of a compromise in between, because we don't know when these homes will be built. We don't know how many CDUs will actually be needed, depending on if it's one home or two primary residents. We don't know if and when the ranch manager's home will be built. And so perhaps we could look at that this historic cabin, which in my mind is really another CDU, because even though it's restricted to no more than 2 weeks a year, but up to 26 weeks a year, that's a half a year. So that's a lot of company, but that's fine. So that in my mind is similar to a CDU. So if we can perhaps word this, that this historic cabin would replace a CDU if a ranch manager's house is not built. Otherwise, that square footage can come off the ranch manager's house. So at least we have some assurance that we're not giving something away without any assurance that there actually will be a ranch manager's house. That's clear.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because, on the one hand, if you're deducting the 850 from the ranch manager's 3,000 square foot potential home, and then the ranch manager's home was never built, you're essentially not seeing 2,200 square feet, that does not get built. So, I'm having a hard time understanding why it's a problem to deduct it from something that isn't built, which ends up being a net reduction of square footage anyhow. So that if they ever go forward, they only get 2,200 square feet. If they don't go forward, 2,200 square feet doesn't appear.
Well, I guess the thought was that ranch house may or may not be built at all.
But that's what I'm saying. If it's not built.
If it's not built, and that ranch manager's house has to come before special review anyway. So why would we be giving away square footage on a potential house that may or may not actually be included on the property?
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at it differently because I'm thinking, there is a potential of 3,000 square feet with special review, and if 850 comes out of it and it's already there, essentially, although it's not restored, it's not new growth per se other than the bathroom addition and those living within it on this temporary basis. And so there's 2,200 square feet that could be built or not built. And if it's not built, we haven't given anything away. And if it is built, they still can't exceed the 3,000 square feet that they already have. I mean, because they'll have already used 850 of those square feet up.
Yeah, one of the confusing things that we talked about was, which we never really discussed when we gave the original approval of the TDRs for the restoration of these cabins in terms of what the actual use was going to be. And that was sort of an error, I think, on all of our parts without really designating. This was going to be an accessory unit, but what is an accessory unit being? And now it's becoming a habitable unit similar to a CDU, which we never really, at least I never really visualized in the earlier discussions. And so now what we have is potential of really 3 CDUs on the property in addition to potentially 2 homes. So that kind of changed the discussion a little bit.
And what you just outlined as a kind of a modified third option, that sounds reasonable because it's just creating an either-or situation later on as the plans come through. So it still could be decided to come out of the ranch manager home, as Mitch has said his client would accept, or if at that time they decide they really only need 1 CDU for both properties, it could come out of that. But we would not be mandating which of those 2 outcomes. It would be the choice of the applicant.
Correct.
That seems like something that's, doesn't close any doors for you in terms of what your property owner has already said they would accept.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I haven't had that specific discussion with my...
But it still leaves that path.
No, I understand, yeah. I understand where you're coming from. I don't think it's an unreasonable suggestion at all. And the suggestion of 2 weeks a year, 26 total weeks, it's just a suggestion. We didn't make it up out of thin air. We took it from other rules in the county for guest ranch, I think, is the one that has that limitation. But, if it needed to be less than 26 weeks a year to not be thought of as the same as a CDU, that's also okay. The thought was 2 weeks consecutive. No more than that already limits it to it's not always full. But for what that's worth.
Excuse me, Rob, the drawback, of course, is that it sounds like a nice condition, but in reality, we have no way of knowing what the use is up there, whether who's in the unit, unless you keep a logbook and return it to the county on a regular basis. So it's interesting, but and I don't want to get into the business of keeping logbooks on people's...
No, but not suggesting that either. I don't know what's done with guest ranches, but that's where we came up with it.
Yeah. But that's the effect of something like that.
Sure.
Right? And so, that's just a comment.
I was just going to mention that I like the suggestion that George is bringing forward here regarding having this be one of the CDUs if if I'm summarizing this properly, having this historic cabin be one of the CDUs if the special review unit of 3,000 square foot, if it's as we're calling it, a ranch manager's house, but I don't think it's classified as a ranch manager's house. It's additional use space. But I think we have to think through the timeline of this and how this works and have some time constraints to it, because let's say you go ahead and build the 2 houses and the 2 CDUs. So now you've got 3 CDUs on 2 houses, but you haven't built the other one, and let's say the time period of lapses, does that mean that you have to get rid of one of the CDUs? So
I think what George was suggesting is we wouldn't be allowed to build a second CDU until we get a special review for ranch managers, and then the cabin's not a CDU, and you can build the other CDU now. And I don't even want to try to...
Makes sense.
I don't even want to try to think of a time frame, because this property has still like 19 years, I think, of its vested rights, so...
Yeah.
I don't want to try to squeeze that.
Yeah.
I can support
That makes
George's
sense.
proposal.
I support that.
think that's a good thought. Now somebody can write it up clearly for...
Well, I think we understand it. Only one CDU can be built until the determination is made, finally, that there will or will not be a ranch manager's unit, is really what we're saying. And if there is to be a ranch manager's unit, the second CDU does not get built. And it's not...
Regardless of whether there's 1 or 2 primary.
No, the second CDU can be built at that point, but the square footage gets taken out of the ranch manager's house.
You almost had it, Lance.
Almost, that was close.
Someone's got to write it up.
I think I've got it. Let me see if this works, if I can give it a shot. The restored guest house will count as one of the 2 potential caretaker dwelling units until such time as special review approval is granted for, and a ranch manager's unit, I would say in parentheses, or other special review use, is built.
I would change one little word. I would say the restored historic cabin versus the restored guest house. Because we want to keep that context in there, because again, part of the original approvals was to allow school kids to get up there and see, visualize what an old ranch looked like. So,
And I think you want the language there as a second sentence to say further, the allowed square footage of 3,000 square feet shall be reduced by the actual built FAR of the restored historic cabin.
And then Lance, then does ComDev look at the plans for that restored historic cabin in terms of what would be a reasonable addition for size? And, I mean, they're looking at adding a bathroom, but bathrooms can run from my house from 60 square feet to something up at Red Mountain, which...
Yeah, no, we're saying that it's going to be a maximum of 100 square feet for an addition. That's what we say.
And there's another condition requiring that the historic preservation officer review and approve all of the restoration and addition plans. The only other thing I think maybe we need to add to all that language we were just discussing is that we're not actually going to file the CDU deed restriction or use it as a CDU right away at this point until later. We can't even get a CO until the road's built and active, and so it all kind of ties together that way. But it would count as one of the available CDUs. Yeah, we can't come in and ask for 2 CDUs until this happens.
But I thought that these homes can't be occupied at all, even in this historic cabin, until a new driveway and access point is available.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
So we have that, plus I'm saying we're not going to actually record a CDU deed restriction on it. Unless we end up having to, by saying we're building 2 homes.
Triggering the other activities.
Correct. The idea is that it's acceptable that the cabin does have this guest use that's proposed. It would not be deed restricted as a CDU at this time, though it would take the place. There would not be the availability for 2 CDUs to be built.
That leaves
exact language, but yeah.
Yes.
Any further questions for Mitch?
Are you ready?
The other thing is, Lance, is that historic cabin that you're calling a guest cabin, again, even it's not deed restricted, but it can't be used as a rental property. Is that in here somewhere?
No.
That's what we just discussed.
We have only limited to owners, friends, and family. We could add the sentence, cannot be used as a rental property. That's clearly not my client's intention, so I don't see any reason.
But you know how things go. I mean, this is the third client we dealt with, and, 19 years from now, we could be yet another go-around of this.
We will add that to 4. That'll be a 4C.
Is there, I asked for further discussion, a little bit of further discussion. Is there a motion?
I think we should let George make the motion.
I'll make
As discussed, as amended.
I'll make a motion. Let's see, where's the resolution here? I'll make a motion, resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, approving the Deadwood Ranch LLC amendments to the BOCC resolution number 059-2010, in parentheses, the Middle Ranch CD PUD plan as discussed and amended.
Second. Any further discussion? Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I'll just mention that I think this is a very positive resolution, and working with the applicant, showing some flexibility, while also not giving away square footage, so very positive. Outcome, I think, for all.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting so much thought into that.
Just
two good suggestions that one came further.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Lance. Welcome. Somehow we've reached almost the end of our agenda here, except for BOCC open discussion.
Don't worry, I have at least 3 hours of items.
Don't joke about that kind of thing.
Thank you.
The first one I wanted to bring back, we actually discussed briefly yesterday, and I've handed out a list of citizens who have applied for boards and commissions. I do have an extra copy if anyone needs one. Yeah, of course you do today, don't you? We, really going back to May, but primarily in July, have interviewed a number of candidates for the Animal Shelter, Citizen Grant Review Committee, Housing Authority, and Senior Services Council. If everyone has that list in front of them, we have the applicants that we have interviewed to date. On the Animal Shelter Board, there are 2 openings. One is a county alternate position, so that is a county position. The other is a joint position. I believe yesterday the board directed that we should forward the names of both applicants that we've interviewed to the city to consider for the joint applicant position, and then we consider the other applicant possibly for the vacant, or for the alternate position. So just check in and make sure that we've got that correct.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. On the Housing Authority, we had one county appointee, Kristen Sable, resigned. You may recall we were trying to find a time to do her interview as a reapplicant. That wasn't working out, and so she did decide to resign her position. We did interview and reappoint Marcia Goshorn. That does, however, leave one vacancy on the board. I do not have, I don't know if you know, Susan, and I'm guessing you don't have this, but what's left on Kristen Sable's, I guess it is a reappointment, so we'd be reappointing for the new term.
Or the rest of the term.
Yeah, the rest of this term. Steve Stunda is the one applicant that we had. And so I don't know if it's the board's pleasure to discuss that applicant or see if we don't have any other applications in, to my knowledge, on the housing.
Yes, Jack.
A question. I was not here for that interview since it occurred May 1st. When you interviewed those who were here, interviewed Steve, was the issue of conflict of interest raised at all? Is not Steve potential developer of the housing downtown?
Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, I did ask in general, about that, and, I had stated this before when we discussed Marcia's reappointment, and at that time, we only had one opening. It was Marcia's seat prior. That while, I really respect Steve and think of him as a, great community member and contributor, I just felt the relationship might be a little too close, having a project in the pipeline and being someone who works on revisions of the guidelines and qualifications of the guidelines and those sort of items. And so, for my personal, I'd love to see him apply for some other board where there's not such a direct connection, and I think he could be a contributing member. But for myself, I think we should re-advertise and continue to have more selection opportunities.
Jack?
Yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I like Steve as a community member, respect him a lot, and appreciate what he's attempting to do, but it is it's almost potentially incestuous as far as how it all goes together, whether it's guidelines or, golly, even the application process, etc. So I would agree with that and would want to thank him heartily, but I have the same concerns.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around that a little bit too, because I think there's a thin line between conflict of interest where you gain from changing something or influencing something, and having experience where you add value to the discussion in making the system better for the public. I mean, we have developers sit on P&Z. We have, people that are very much involved with the building aspect, involved with making our code for Pickens County. And I think the conflict of interest comes up when it's talking about a specific project, but I think there's value to having that knowledge, and I think having the understanding that when there is a direct gain in terms of conflict of interest, to recuse oneself or whatever, but I mean, having that experience I think is a plus.
If I may, I agree with you very much, and I think that when there are public hearings on guideline changes, it's a chance for everyone who has experience or who is impacted by those to add public comment and input to the board making the recommendations and decisions. Again, I just have concerns that, he's been a party who we have had discussions with about whether county housing programs should be involved in that project as well as a slew of other projects, and it's still, quote, on the table. But when, I was on the housing board many years ago, and you're constantly looking at the qualification guidelines, the sale prices of units. Should a Category 3 be only able to sell for $140,000? It should be $146,000. It should be $156,000. And should people with an income of only $72,000 be able to bid for that, or should it be up to $85,000? And I just find the relationship too close for being a deciding board member. And you can recuse yourself on a project-specific basis, but when it's the guidelines and it applies to all projects, I think it would be someone who would have to remove himself regularly from the dialogue and the discussion, and then that doesn't add the experience. You don't get to add the experience if you've had to leave the table and leave the room. Whereas if you contribute as a member of the public in a public hearing, you do get to contribute. So again, it's nothing against Steve personally. I would not be comfortable.
So hold on just a second, Jack. Well, what about the argument that if you are in employee housing or affordable housing, you wouldn't be able to serve on the board itself because you have a particular interest in guidelines, cost levels, all the things that you just mentioned. I mean,
If you're already in housing, I don't think that, for the most part, they would affect you, Michael.
well, but I'm not so sure about that. So I think my view is that unless there's a direct observation that there is personal gain to be made from a position on one of these volunteer boards, that it's such a small community, people have varied interests, that you cannot just limit it to people who you think are safe choices. And I just didn't see, Steve himself said that if he perceived any conflict, that he would recuse himself. And I think that happens to many people within the community often because the community is small enough that you have interests in everything, essentially. So I share Rob's observation that unless you can say that there's going to be a direct gain, that people are involved and they have experiences to bring to the board. Jack?
Yeah, going to the example you used, somewhat analogous, I think is your intent, concerning living in housing and then being appointed at the board. I don't think that is relevant because those of us who have entered into the affordable housing program have deed restrictions, and those don't get changed. So I'm not sure that that's relevant here. But I would remind us that not only is there an issue about direct conflict of interest and personal gain, which I would never expect Steve to even question that. There's no doubt. I mean, this is a good guy. But there's also the appearance of conflict, and that is equally important as to perceptions and what comes down. So I'm sticking to my story.
George, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I would be comfortable with Steve, based on all the discussions we had, but I think in the past, we've always tried to appoint when we've got a full board approval, and unless I'm mistaken on that.
We've done 4-1 sometimes.
So when if it's 3-2, I would, at this point, I guess I would be willing to re-advertise and see who else may be interested. But I could support Steve.
So you want to call for advertising for a limited amount of time? Just
Yeah, I wouldn't have it open-ended, and then if no one comes forward, then we can have this discussion again. But I could support Steve. I'm just in consideration to the two commissioners who have some concerns.
So is that acceptable with the board? Okay, we'll do that. Okay. So we'll re-advertise for not an extended period of time, which I think, what does that mean, board, a month?
We've been advertising them continuously, so it's really when you want us to come back and, let you know, have we had additional applicants and do you want to reconsider Steve's candidacy? Because that's what I'm hearing, is that you'll leave it open, see if there are other applicants for comparison, but that Steve may still be eligible for appointment since the majority of you.
But we're also trying to limit the time that we advertise because we don't want to advertise for 6 months.
Exactly. And so I guess I need to gauge of your comfort levels at 2 weeks.
45 days, 30 days.
Or a month, sorry.
Is that acceptable?
Okay. We'll come back to you in a month and we'll see if we've had any applicants by then.
A month of advertising.
A month of advertising, yeah. So potentially one of our more interesting appointment situations is with our Citizen Grant Review Committee. We have one youth position that is vacant. We've had one applicant, one interview, which you did yesterday to discuss. And then we have 2 renewals of regular members awaiting decision, but we have 4 applicants in this case. I'd suggest maybe we discuss the youth member first, since that's probably the easiest one for us to address, and then talk about the renewals, the 2 renewal positions, and the fact that we have 4 applicants for that.
So The kid, as he's known as?
Yes, I'd like to appoint Kid
Okay.
Dewey Sullivan.
Okay.
Michael?
Yes.
I just want to bring up that I brought this up during one of these interviews, or a couple of these interviews. You know, the discussion of the size of this board and what's most effective, and I just thought I'd bring it up again here to rehab that discussion. I mean, with the increase in the Healthy Community Fund funding, having a board of 4 people and 1 youth representative or giving recommendations for us to a good deal of grant funding, I think it warrants more input on that citizen board, in my opinion. And I'd like to explore the possibility of, should this be a 7-member board, 5 regular and 2 youth?
Those are good suggestions, I think, but it's very close to the August period where they're going to do their review, and I would be reluctant to change it now, and I'm not sure that we could, but I would entertain talking to Nan and to Mitzi and to looking at their articles and see what is involved and do it for a year from now, or at least in January or something. But how does the board feel? Yes, Jack.
Yeah, I think this is such an outstanding, quote-unquote, class of applicants. I mean, this is a tough decision as we try to eliminate 1 or 2 or whatever, that I wouldn't hesitate right now directing staff to investigate, because we have the applications. We've recently interviewed everyone but Valerie, I believe, and she was May 8th. And I find out, is it the bylaws that we're amending, or is it the enabling legislation? I don't know exactly which methodology would be used, but that's up to staff to find out. And I would initiate this now. And because we already have up to 2 youth, so that's not the issue. It's just adding 1 additional, what we'll call regular member versus youth.
Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, I don't know that I have the answer, but at the beginning of our memo on the background, it says established pursuant to Resolution 155-2002 and the referendum passed by the electorate providing the mill levy. It requires the county board to appoint 5 members. So if it was a resolution, I'm not sure that how long it takes to change it with the public hearings and things like that. And if it was by the ballot language, I'm not sure that we can change it at all. But I'm open to the idea, as you've suggested. I'm just also looking at the timelines and thinking if it's a minimum of 30 days with the publication and drafting and then hearings and approval, will it upset this year's process? So, again, I think it's well worth taking a look at, but I don't know timing-wise if we can accomplish it.
Yeah, that was essentially my point,
Yeah.
but I also think we should talk to Mitzi and Nan and see what their recommendation is, because I don't know what they would say, whether a small board of effective people is the best way to get this done, or a larger board of hopefully just as effective people is amenable to them also. I just don't know. And I think that given the applicants, they can handle the workload for this particular calendar year, and we address the issue later. George?
I agree.
Keep it simple.
Okay.
We'll bring that discussion back to the board so that we can, both understand the mechanisms and have a discussion about the best way to move forward. But for this year, we're going to stay with the 4 members plus our 1 youth member who we've appointed. So we still have a challenging decision, it sounds like, ahead of us, because we do have 2 reappointments and 4 applicants.
Yes. Rob?
Yeah, and I was just
And one
going to
vacancy.
ask that, and I'm okay with this direction, but John, if we could bring this back to the board sooner or later, just so we can at least get the feedback from Mitzi and Nan and whoever, because they might say, yeah, this is great to do this year, and let's get it done. So if we can, bring it back as an MOI even next week or something, or, because that may be their advice, because I thought I got a pretty positive response from her when she was like, it might work.
Yeah, and we could do that as an MOI. We need to research the resolution versus ballot language versus bylaws question, and our agenda is being completed tomorrow is the one challenge we've got. So.
Yeah, I thought the ballot question was in particular for the mill levy.
Yeah,
And
I just don't know.
referred to as one of the bullets, a citizens review committee, but I can't remember
I can't
what the
either,
number
yeah.
is.
And it's a subject for our attorney, and we can't do it here, we can't do it in Sure. We have to unleash the forces of the county on this, so.
So I'd like to propose reappointment for Doris Downey.
I would support that.
I would support that.
George?
Yes.
Okay. So that leaves us with one more position to fill?
Actually,
I believe
two,
two.
because there's a resignation of Laura Pritchard, as well as the other,
Thank you, you're correct.
so there's two more to be appointed.
Okay, and then Ashley Connolly is reapplying.
Yeah, I would support her also. I liked her answer for that difficult question that I asked. Just one voice here.
I would support her as well.
George?
The only notes that I had about her was the question about any, again, conflicts of interest, knowing and being involved in a lot of organizations in the past. But we had that discussion when we first appointed her as well. And Ashley is the lady who used to work for the Aspen Foundation.
And the Counseling Center,
Foundation.
and a few different.
Yeah. And so we went through that discussion last year, and we did appoint her, and it seems like that went fine. There were no issues, so I would be comfortable with this is a reapplication.
Yeah, I am not going to support Ashley, although I appreciate her contributions. And she, put it on the table, I think, very clearly for us during the re-interview, that if those close connections and insider scoops on issues cause concerns, then don't reappoint me. And again, I appreciate her and know that she was involved through her husband on the renewal of this, but just really very much for the same reasons I was concerned about Steve Sunda, and is it just a little too close? And those concerns been out there. I think it's best to be safe than sorry in all these regards, and so I'm not going to support that.
So I can't recall now, do we have similar concerns with the interview with Valerie?
No.
No, we did not, okay.
Yes, Jay?
George.
Well, I was just going to sort of jump around a little bit first, and I would support Robin Van Domelen.
Well, I don't know, we're really talking about
Because we have two spots.
Ashley right now, reapplying, right?
But we have two spots.
But maybe we finish Ashley first.
No, that's fine, I'd like to sort of come around.
Right, I mean, I'd just like to address Rachel's voiced concerns. Jack has said yes. You, I think, said
I'm comfortable
with it. Rob, comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with it. So that's a 4-1, but...
Yeah, may I
Yeah.
just add? I thought that was a critical question I had asked her, and it seems like, of course, over her first term, there were some of the things, questions about what you were mentioning, Rachel. But she apparently has backed off, not involved in one of those foundations or whatever. Honestly, I don't remember the name. I'm concerned that this is such a big job that we have all new people, and first she had to get past the conflict issue for me, and I thought she did answer that. But then when you look at this, there, Doris and
Patrick McAllister would be returning members.
Doris and Patrick McAllister are the only two knowledgeable individuals, and I'm supportive of having a third, since she has, for me, passed that litmus test. And I wasn't here for the interview for Steve, so I don't have all the the in and outs of that interview.
So, are we comfortable with Valerie then? I'm not Valerie, I'm sorry. Robin or who?
Ashley.
Ashley. There's so many names.
Yes.
Okay. So, Ashley Conley is going to be reappointed.
So we have one left, Jen?
One space left.
Yeah.
Again, I would suggest Robin for that space. Robin, of course, grew up here, raised her kids here, has been involved in multiple different community organizations, has, I think, a really depth and breadth of understanding the community and community needs.
I totally would support Robin, and I also really wanted to support Jim Richardson as a new voice, but we don't have a seat that way. I think they're all good candidates. I did not interview Valerie. I was out at that meeting.
So, Jack, did you say Robin?
Yes. I support Robin.
Okay, so Robin.
There we go.
And we send letters to those who we don't appoint, and we certainly, I would like us to consider in that letter stating that we are considering expanding the size of the board, or is that premature?
No, I think we're considering it. Yeah. Whether we do or not, who knows?
Yeah, and so that we can accommodate more good voices.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
We have one applicant and six alternate positions open on the Senior Services Council. And Lori Moore was our applicant who we interviewed on July 3rd.
Sounds good.
Do you know Lori?
She worked for me for 5 years. She doesn't work for me now. She's great. She's great. She does a great job.
Okay.
And I was blown away by how thrilled she was to be involved with the seniors, because it was a part of her that I didn't know. So she took.
Sounds good.
She blew me away with that. So
Lori Moore?
Yes.
Okay with the board? Lori Moore.
What was the decision on the animal shelter?
We're sending both applicants to the city of Aspen to review,
One will be
letting them know we need a joint, I'm sorry, Michael.
well, one will be a Pickens County representative, one will be a joint representative.
Okay. Last item, the future agendas, you mentioned the change.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, I've got a couple more. We can jump on to that.
Thanks, Susan.
So that's it for board appointments. Thank you. Another item, I was in error yesterday when we were talking about future agendas and the airport discussion. We had originally broken the discussion into two separate. The staff in the meantime had worked on consolidating that presentation, and we're hoping to do everything at our next meeting when Rachel cannot be here. And I think when we made the decision to go ahead with our next airport briefing, it was under the assumption that there was going to be another opportunity to visit on the 14th. And so I apologize, but I wanted to bring that back, and if we want to stick with the all five at the table, then we should probably just keep that on the 14th.
Well, no, for the 14th of August. Yes.
Everything on
Yes,
the
if everything's all at the same meeting and there's not a follow-up meeting, I definitely would like to be there. And if you can rearrange it so it's sooner than August 14th, and, when we're all here, that's fine too.
Okay.
That's good. Okay.
All right. So I apologize for that confusion. Jim and I were busy about it this morning and realized that. some easy stuff. Rachel, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, you forwarded this email about the T-shirts, the junior livestock.
Sure, yeah. CCI is raising the funds that they always do to buy some livestock at the junior livestock. It's $100, which will give you a T-shirt this year. And $75 will go to the junior livestock sale. They're hoping that you'll come down there and participate. I don't know that I will or won't be able to do that, but I do think we've traditionally given the money out of our contingency fund to the junior livestock sale to help support 4-H and rural ag. So that would be my request, that we contribute $100 again this year.
But there's only one T-shirt. How do we divide up the work?
Scissors.
Sorry. We could flip coins here. We'll give it to John.
I like that idea too.
So I think we're all set. The T-shirt issues, people hand out too much junk with everything, and they should keep their T-shirts.
Yeah, and put more money into the auction. I would agree with that, but we can make that a comment to them. Okay, send them 100, keep the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Don't put up too many. Okay.
Okay. I thought I'd just go through some high level. I didn't prepare a presentation or such, but just to let you know where we're at in some of the strategic plan areas that you authorized us to move forward on. You may recall you had the 6 goal areas, and we have been busy working on those in addition to the day-to-day activities of the county, and wanted to give you an update on at least some of the areas. I'm going to start with broadband, since I think that's the first one on our list. We have been working with Kevin Ward, and he has been busily facilitating a number of discussions with providers and tower companies and that sort of thing. We are in the process right now of getting analytics done in the county where they're actually measuring where cellular services for both voice, 3G, and I believe 4G are available within the county by providers. So we're going to have one of our big problems has been accurate information, as well as preliminary analytics on where would towers have to go to provide services in the gap areas. Prior to that, just to back up a little bit, we have been working with different stakeholders, public safety, RAFTA, county staff, trying to remember who else was in doing ski company, doing mapping, where we mapped out where would we, what are our highest priority, if you were to put it into 3 tiers, we mapped out where we really want to see service, and so we're going to be able to match up the analytics to those maps. So we will have that. Hopefully, the analytic or the measurement program will be done, I believe, at the end of this week, and then the analytics will start from there. So hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll be able to come back to you and present this is the type of infrastructure we think we need to have in place to cover the county. Here's where we can use what's existing. Here's where we need something new. And that will probably flow back into a land use question at some point.
Yes, sir.
Well, some of that information, you're looking at sources of funding as well?
Well, that's kind of the interesting part about all of this, George, is if you get the right mix of areas, this may be something that we could RFP out and have financed by a company that come in and build those towers and then lease it out to providers. A lot of what we would bring to the table then is the land use process and potentially, exclusivity to a certain degree, and then they bring financing to the table. That may be one option. We'll have some sense of, we'll have an idea of how much the sites will cost to develop, not to engineered, but we'd have cost estimates if we were to go out and do some of that ourselves. Obviously, some of these sites are probably going to have utilities readily available. Other sites are not, and that's going to be the big infrastructure cost. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but we've learned a lot in this process, and we may not have to bring as much money to the table on the cellular side.
Yeah, I didn't know if there were any grant opportunities.
We're looking into those.
State, federal.
There's actually potentially a new federal program coming forward that may provide numbers through the Farm Bill. We don't have the details yet as to whether what we're doing would qualify, but we think we may have a path forward, potentially. We've got a lot of ground to cover still, but we're seeing that there may be a path forward without having to pursue those options. So we'll see. We're still in the development phase, but we're learning a lot and have been moving forward on it. Housing, as you know, we've engaged a broker. She is in the process right now of starting to develop a list of potential sites by some of the criteria that the board has established in past discussions, for example, being within the urban growth boundaries and being suitable to serve some of the income ranges that we've identified as being a higher need, looking at HOA dues, taxes, desirability. So we're building a matrix right now to bring and start to get some input from the board. Are we hitting the mark, or do we need to be considering other factors or not? And I think we will be ready. That will, because we'll be discussing particular properties, there'll be an executive session discussion, and we're targeting bringing her in on the next exec in 2 weeks. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're working on kind of parallel tracks here a little bit with the idea of a buy down as well as the idea of other opportunities that might be out there. I know we had met with Scott Russell, who has an opportunity down in the Salt Urban Area Growth Boundary for 25 units that he wants to build and is looking for investment, and that's what the mitigation money would be. The Boomerang Lodge is still kind of lingering with their lawsuit and what they want to do, and I don't know what other, obviously the city is looking at, having us be a part of Burlingame to some extent, and I don't know where we are with that, but making sure that the board has all the information that we're looking at a parallel track for not just buy downs, but for other opportunities as well.
And, yeah, right now, this would need to be a discussion with the board, because right now staff is working with the broker primarily on buy-down options. We haven't dedicated a lot of resources outside of some of the discussions on opportunities that have come our way. Like you said, like the project down to Salt, or we've been approached about the Boomerang in the past. We have not gone out and solicited or tried to even evaluate other types of development opportunities. We were sticking right now to buy downs with the idea that we would in the future start looking at these other opportunities. If the board is wanting to expand that, that's a completely legitimate discussion. We probably don't have the resources in-house right now to do that level of analysis. That may require us to think about having some assistance both to identify and analyze, just because we don't have that kind of in-house expertise right now. If the board is wanting to see that full portfolio of options, that's something we can talk about, and we can certainly shift gears towards, but I think I'd need some direction and probably need to come back with a proposal there.
Can I just follow up on that? Sure. First, I wouldn't classify it as a shifting gears, because I consider it a parallel track to what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of adding a different vehicle towards getting to an end goal, which is, in my mind, putting our $11 million worth of mitigation money to community use versus sitting in a bank earning 0.01%, which is not a great community use for that. And so that's the first thing, that I think it's a parallel track. I don't think it's stop doing anything that we're doing. It's not a switching of gears. And then the other thing is the only reason why I continue to bring this up is I think we're at a unique opportunity right now. I mean, there may not be a lot out there, but the market is such that it's not always going to be, these certain opportunities might not always be there. So I think, the quicker we can move on. And I would even bring up the conversation of, can we utilize some of that mitigation money to, have some outside consultant work help on this, because the resources don't exist. I mean, we're talking $11 million, and that fund is going to grow by $4 million, or is projected to grow by $4 million over the next 5 years. If we're talking, $20,000 to $50,000 to get moving on something, to get advice to our board and some direction in policy making, I think that small amount of money is money well spent in terms of taking advantage of where the market is today.
Yes, George.
There's a lot of things that are sort of being discussed in the community, but they've been haven't been discussed for several years now without any big movement. So I would say that we should start with the buy downs and see what opportunities there are. Even though we have $11 million in the bank, it was never really, I don't believe, my intention to have to spend that immediately. It's just depending on how the opportunities arise. And so some of these opportunities may take a year, another year or two to really fully develop, and then we still have that opportunity to participate. But I don't see going out and hiring a consultant for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at this point to try to identify and weigh one option over another at this point.
Rachel?
Yeah, I was under the impression that we were working towards a portfolio of opportunities, and one of those was buy downs, and there was a kind of a rough breakdown of allocating X amount towards these various categories of whether it's participating in a new construction project that someone else is doing, or land banking, or buy downs, and that the broker is bringing us opportunities towards the buy down portion of that, but that we're not eliminating by spending all of our money on buy downs, but we were embarking on some new housing opportunities. So I see them as part of the same portfolio. This one element is moving forward perhaps more quickly, but I do support that we should stay in contact with these other opportunities, and if we need expertise at the appropriate time to evaluate them, yes, I agree with doing that, but I don't see evaluating those as being an either-or with moving forward with buy-downs at this time. I mean, that's where I thought we had reached some consensus to move forward, that there were different pieces of the portfolio that we all could see some support for, and maybe some that we were less enthusiastic, but that by trying to match those different categories, we would be able to move forward.
And I agree, and that's why I said it's not a switching of gears, that it's, I'm not saying not due to buy now.
No, and I know you're not, but I'm just saying that I don't think that we need to wait until we reevaluate those to look at what is on the market.
The only thing that I'm hearing from county and county staff is that we're not doing anything with those other sites because we don't have the resources. That we're not re-looking at Boomerang. I'm just making a hypothetical example. We're not doing anything right now because there's no county resources towards it.
Right, and we can't use mitigation funds. I mean, that's been investigated before. As far as I understand from previous managers as well as yourself, those monies have to be invested in sticks and mortar, and that if we want to make a general fund appropriation, we could do so. But that's where that goes.
The source you all have available right now is you did appropriate that $100,000 for strategic planning initiatives.
From the general fund.
And we clearly have money left in that. I think there are a couple, Rob, I think if we were to go that way, the direction would have to be to go out and solicit, because we don't know, like we've all acknowledged, some are ready to go, some are on the shelf, some may just be ideas that we don't know about yet, and it would be to have a pretty big effort to define what it is, and it may or may not be a big effort, but it'd have to be, this board would have to be prepared to define what it is you wanted to ask for in some way, and that could be a discussion. We would have to then set those parameters out in some type of bid package, I would guess, and then evaluate those coming back. And it's that, I think what we've got the capability and skills in-house to do is to have that discussion about what kind of segment of the market might you want to hit. But from there, we would need some additional assistance, because we just don't have housing staff or development staff that know that business.
Yes, Rob.
So again, what I'm hearing is unless we have additional assistance, nothing's happening on that front.
Well,
other than we hear about it and we just we're waiting.
That's correct. I think that was a discussion that the board had about how to phase this in, and the agreement that we struck was, or that the board struck, was first engaging a broker and seeing if there were some buy-down opportunities, and then moving on to see if we could enhance our capabilities. Now, if you wanted to accelerate that, which is what I think you're suggesting, then what I would be coming back to the board with is we need to engage somebody to help us. And you're right, we have not done that. That has not been the direction we understood we had to move forward.
George.
And we did actually talk about one option yesterday that we could pursue on a very elementary level. If that were to go somewhere, then we can engage someone. So it's not like we're completely disregarding this. And I know there are some opportunities that in the next year or so come online down in BOCC, but they're not really ripe yet to really try to develop a pro forma yet.
Do you mind, Rachel?
No.
Well, here, let's do this. We've heard Rob's concern, and it's a real concern. We acknowledge that. But quite frankly, Rob, I'm not sure, having been through some variation of trying to buy housing already, that presents just difficulties in and of itself. And so our capabilities, just amongst the 5 commissioners, are limited too. And I think the approach of saying, well, let's get a broker, let's look at housing units, was an initial first step that was positive. And that's something we all agreed on. And I wouldn't dismiss your proposal, but I'm not sure that we can address it now in open discussion. And I've heard what you said, but the challenges are actually larger than our capacity. And it's not because we want inaction. We as a board, 5 of us, and the staff just don't have the capacity to do more right now. If we can get past this current proposal, which is, there are some opportunities, let's do that. If we can work together on that, I think that's a good positive first step. Doesn't eliminate what you're suggesting at all. But I would like to get over the first hurdle rather than add any more hurdles, quite frankly. Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'm not even sure how many months ago it was we had our mini retreat. We talked about not just the retreat, but we had more of a housing workshop. And there were a lot of ideas put out on the table by all of us. And, it's hard to gauge where there was overwhelming support or some interest, look at it later, because I don't want to see other uses of those funds eliminated either for opportunities such as the senior continuing retirement community project that seems to be moved forward in BOCC. And could we work with that in such a way that freed up some of our existing units and actually got people to a better living situation. We're now talking more about some of the human service needs in housing as well. And, you know, it may be that we simply need to do a follow-up to firm up where and how we'd like to spend additional resources towards finding future directions. Kind of like Michael has outlined, but I do see this as a first step, and I don't think your interest or my interest or other interests in this overall program have fallen off the table. This is just, the first horse out of the gate, but it was still, to my mind, at least if I remember correctly, we were saying up to $1 million worth of buy-downs, or $1.5 million, or something like that. It wasn't, let's go out and spend the $11 million. So we still have opportunities, and of course we have a larger housing summit coming up in September that we can take a look at as well. So keep moving forward.
Jack? I agree with Rob's concept of parallel, but definitely at different speeds. And certainly I support the direction and our involvement with the realtor, the broker now. I don't think that's a hugely complex issue, quite frankly. I mean, any realtor in X amount of time can prepare a portfolio of options to meet our criteria, which, you mentioned urban growth boundary, unequivocal, close to transportation, all of those things. So, I think obviously we're all in sync with that. The parallel part is people come and solicit us. We should be open. We probably have require an initial meeting with John, so that's that expertise, like we did with meaning yourself with Boomerang. You got a feel for what that meant, and that to me is we just keep our ears open. There potentially might be something in Basalt. Fine. I am in no way supportive of hiring a consultant and getting all geared up, because I haven't even defined what that means. I also believe that on a preliminary basis, after a John Peacock interview, and if it feels right that, we might need, go a little step further, the next step is not hiring a consultant, it's going to ComDev and just getting an analysis. What does this mean? Zoning and that. We have a ComDev department, does an outstanding job, but they're not busy in any way, shape, or form the way they used to be. So to hand them a project, just give me a zoning analysis. I don't see that as a big deal. But I'm not saying, let's get into a land use program in any way, shape, or form. But I think the parallel is ears open. So we respond to whatever comes our way. But I also agree what I think I'm hearing, we're not going to go out soliciting, because then that does involve, a lot steeper curve as far as support system. So, we're kind of, I'm hearing that I'm even talking the same area that most of us are here, because the most is not including a consultant for me. So, keep our ears open.
Okay. So, do you want to introduce any other subjects, John?
I don't know. We have been following up. We had a healthcare summit earlier. Rachel was able to attend that. We've gotten a smaller group together now that's starting to move forward and develop recommendations that we'll bring back to the larger group probably towards the, end of August or so. We can move that quickly with the different interests. But we're still moving towards really probably 2013 will still be in a fairly similar kind of cycle that we're in now. We'll probably do some tweaks. But for that 2014 budget, really having some hopefully significant changes in how we're operating as a community. So those discussions are moving forward, and we have a set of providers at the table and still working on the analytics.
For this fall. So, John, would that time frame also include the opportunity to do some data sharing with some other organizations?
Yeah, and so what's happening there is there's an organization called HealthBridge that's now partnering with Quality Health Network, and Quality Health Network is the common electronic medical record that's being implemented among providers in Pickens County. And so not everyone's on it, but most providers are on it. What's missing from that, so that gives a medical record data layer. What's missing from that then is the claims data layer, where you can start to do cross-reference and see, okay, what services are being provided and what's working in terms of treatment, and then what's the cost or pay side. Those, oddly enough, those two sides don't come together on their own, and they've been in different formats. So what we're working on with HealthBridge and the 5 major employers is being able to cross-reference those data points. HealthBridge is just being implemented now as another program, and I don't understand all the technology layers, George, but it's basically another program that will sit over that medical record database. So they're not even going to be ready to start generating that kind of information until this fall. But we are moving forward with it. And we had representatives from HealthBridge at that summit, as well as Quality Health Network. So those are the 3. You know, we do have 6 areas. We're still moving forward with some survey work and such on the communication side. But really, those 3 areas are where we probably have the most significant, I think, activity as of late. And since we had a little bit of extra time, I just wanted to bring you up to speed. And I'll stop open discussion on my side there.
Yes, Rachel.
Well, 2 things. One, let's get that one back up too, so I can see if anyone else is available. On this topic, I know it would be for later, but I do feel it is very significant that we continue the work, and I know you are, on how do we respond to external threats, how do we gear up for that with different changes, and the timeliness of those sort of things. So that's still, you know, mostly for me it relates to water, but it certainly relates to public lands and those issues. And are we achieving the capacity as we need to be timely? But beyond that, there was an invitation I received by Colorado Springs Utilities to attend their water tour of their facilities. It's a 2-day tour, bus tour, on Thursday, September 6th and Friday, September 7th. And I will not be there, and I have seen variations of this tour because there's a lot of connectivity between what the Colorado Foundation for Water Education tours have done and others. And so I'm going to leave this with John to check in and see if any of you guys are interested in it. It does start in Colorado Springs, which is a little bit of a bummer that way, and it will end there. But it will come back up to Twin Lakes and look at the tunnels and pumping plants and their future plans and things like that. And he could check in and see if they would substitute another commissioner from our board, or John Ely or Cindy, if someone else was interested. So I wanted to let you guys know about that opportunity, and John can make copies for you and see if anyone else would like to sign up for that.
Why don't we put these in your boxes, and then you can just let me know if you're interested, and then we'll make the contact.
Yeah, I'll be out of town. So.
Yeah.
Isn't that when CCI is?
It is when CCI is, and I'm already out of town.
Put anything in my box, please.
Okay.
I'll take a look at it. Here.
Yeah. Well, make sure you make copies for everybody, because Cindy or John Ely might be interested as well.
And then, did you want to?
Yeah, and then that's the river, we've been invited to the 50th anniversary of the Golden Year of Benefits with the Frying Pan, Arkansas project. And that's when I will be at Water Congress up in Steamboat at that time. Everyone wants to go Pueblo.
Pueblo on Friday the 17th.
Yeah, because it's the anniversary. Yeah. So anyhow, that's that. August.
Yes, George.
John, I asked you yesterday we can get a follow-up on an update on the Red Butte Ranch issue.
Yeah, and I have not talked to Dale yet.
I don't know if it's Dale or John Ely.
Okay.
So, could,
I know Dale was working on it, so,
yeah, but I think it's a John Healy.
okay. I don't have an update for you, yeah.
Any further open discussion?
Do you accept a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks.